Hello, welcome to my story. Wherever you are, take a moment to stop, to rest, and to think about the knowledge and naming of things. What things do you have near you? How many of them are as old as you are? How many of them are as old as your parents or the oldest member of your family? How many of them are older than the place you live, the name of the place you live? How many are as old as the hills? What would you do if you had the knowledge of everything and the names of everything? Well, my story is about names and about knowledge today. And forgive me if I get some of the names muddled up, because it goes back a really long way. It goes back to a conversation between the ancients, a conversation which took place in a landscape. And the conversation was about the names of the landscape. And the story tells that one day St. Patrick, was wandering and met one of Finn McCool's war band, a great warrior called Kilshie. And they would be sitting on the hillside talking. And maybe Patrick had asked to tell the name of the place they're sitting and the story behind it. And Kilshie might have said, peace and benedictions to you, Father. That is a good story. Because the hill we're sitting on is the Hill of Allen, a great, great fortress of the Dedanan, the people of Danu, who arrived with Armageddon, who told a poem at the start of a battle and set many events in course. And this was the fortress of Nadav, the Silver Arm, and the fortress of his descendant, Teig. And this is where the story of Finn McCool began, with Teig descended from the Dedanan, a great and powerful druid, a mighty warrior surrounded by treasures and fighters and maidens and songs and stories, wealthy beyond the dreams of farmers, but with a fear. Always a fear, because there was a prophecy that one day one of his own daughter's children would take the hill away from him. What do you do with a prophecy like that? It's a bit scary, eh? Especially if you've built up things from the start. Well, especially when your daughter grows up and becomes a beautiful woman and is known as Myrna of the fair neck or the smooth hair, and all the warriors in Ireland want her for their wife. But Ireland was not a lawless land. Conn of the 100 Battles, a great king, held the peace, and the Fianna, the war bands, they were controlled, led is a good word, led by Cú, a great warrior himself. And if there was a law breaking or feuding, then the Fianna would go in and they would sort it out, because every kingdom contributed men to the Fianna. Not always men who respected the rule of each other, though, and always they were competing with each other to become top dog, top hound. Anyhow, Teig, sitting in his fortress, decided to avoid the prophecy by never letting his daughter marry anyone. However, his daughter and the warrior Cú had different view in this matter, and Cú leapt the battlements in the night and landed in the dun, and skillfully and swiftly and silently he and Myrna left, ran away to feast and to celebrate with the Fianna. After all, Cú is the leader of the Fianna. He is a singer of songs. He can run through forests silently and sing with a spear in battle. Perhaps not the lifestyle you might want for your daughter, your wee daughter, but daughters grow up, sons grow up, and that's the way it was. Teig still was not of a mind to accept his fate. And so, not being as great a warrior as Cool and not able to challenge him straight face to face, he went to Con of the 100 Battles and said, "This wrong has been done to me. What are you going to do about it?" And Con probably sat for a while and thought, well, you've tried to kind of avert fate. Maybe this is something that you just can't avoid. Live with it. Which Tay drew in the malice of darkness, drew on the fairy blood within him, and stared at Con with a stare of doom, and told him he would use druid magic if Con did not give him satisfaction. Now, Con was a brave king and a brave warrior, and face to face, he'd take anyone on. But druid magic is different. The things that go in the dark, like a knife scratching over a metal plate, are things to be cautious of. So he took the diplomatic solution, and he banished Cool, took away from him the leadership of the Fianna, and told him that, yeah, you are now outlaw, outcast. At which Clan Morna were, they were so overjoyed because they'd been wanting to be in charge for a long time. And their leader mustered his entire clan and all their allies. And Cool mustered his clan and all his allies. And there was a great battle, the Battle of Nucker. And it lasted for days. And at other times, I've told stories about smiths and puzzle cups and things. But today, the way the story goes this time is that Cool and the leader of Clan Morna were facing each other in single combat. And well, Cool was having the upper hand. Or you might say the upper eye. Because with his sword, he took out the eye of his enemy and was ready to go in for the kill when he was stabbed from behind by the leader of Clan Morna's brother. And he was dead. But the leader of Clan Morna gained a name that day and was ever after known as Gall McMorna. Gall means like blinded. But his enemy was dead, and Gall became the leader of the Fianna. And sitting near the king in the hill of Tara, he sent his clan out to find Myrna and any of the offspring of Finn McCool. Any of the offspring of Cool, because he was afraid that one day the son of his enemy would come and kill him, which would be a reasonable thing to do if your dad's been killed by somebody. Anyway, Myrna knew this well, and she was pregnant with Cool's child, and she disappeared into the forest. Not into the forest on her own, because, well, she was of the Fae folk, and she was a fine and fair woman and of high standing. So she had two friends, one of whom was her sister, probably. Anyway, the names of these two were Leah Luchra and Bomal. And Leah Luchra, the grey lady, she knew how to swing a sword. She knew how to make a spear throw. And Bomal knew the knowledge of herbs and oaks. She knew the songs to draw out the potential in things. She knew the phases of the moon. She could read the stars. And together, they lived in the forest as if it were their home. And it was a big forest, and it was easy to become lost in it, or if you didn't want to be found, to live comfortably. So after Myrna had given birth, she left, and she went somewhere else and married another king because she was a princess. She wanted nice beds to sleep in, didn't want to sleep on thorns and roses and all that sort of stuff. The boy she named Demna. And Demna grew up without a father, but with two mothers, skillful, and with a forest to teach him. So one day, maybe the lesson would be walking through the forest properly, placing your feet, knowing where you're going, because if you do that wrong, then a stone hurts your foot and you learn. Another day might be climbing a tree, and maybe you'd get stuck, and then you would learn mercy as the grey lady would come and lift you down. And another day would be climbing a tree that was just a little bit too high because Beaumelle always reckoned it was good to set a challenge. And then there were other lessons, like swimming. And maybe Domna, as he swam, chasing the fish, thought he could catch a fish by the tail. And you can't do that, but you can swim fast, and the doing of it and the motivation is great. Until one day, his two stepmothers looked, and they saw him dive silently into the water, swim underneath for as long as most people can hold their breath, and grab a duck by the legs. And in between the quack and the ack, the duck was down under the water and drowned. And that was their tea for the night. To swim like that silently, that showed that he knew the water, he knew the swimming. The thing was, the forest was dark and deep and wild, and you can keep a lot of secrets there, but Domna was beginning to show signs of being a lot like his dad. His blonde hair gave it away quite easily. But his features, his nobility, his skill, his agility, well, the fairy blood was showing in him as well. And the clan mourner was still looking, still searching, and Gaul was not sitting comfortably on the seat of being the leader of the Fianna. So one day, it became time to leave, and Domna left. So when Clan Mourner came looking, all they found were a grey-haired lady and an aged druidess in a house on their own, in a wood. It's said that after that, Domna was passing a river where the children of Clan Mourner, about his age, were playing, and they were playing beside the river. That was it. First time they were playing beside the river, and they were playing a game which Domna hadn't seen before. Let's call it Shinty. And so Domna played with him for a while, and that was great, except Domna was so good that eventually it was the whole of the children of Clan Mourner playing against one person to make it a fair match. And that kind of caught attention. But what really caught attention was when they were all playing the next day, swimming and bathing and all that sort of stuff. And having just been beaten by one person in a Shinty match, the children of Clan Mourner were a bit upset. So they tried to push Domna under the water. They played rough because, warriors' kids play rough. And then Domna managed to get the upper hand. I mean, he could swim like a fish. He could catch wild ducks. And soon he had them all underneath the water and was drowning them when the shout came up from the shore, "What is that blonde-haired boy doing?" And the word for blonde is Finn. So the name began to stick. And they recognised the family features. So he ran again, and he ran through the forest, and he ran and he escaped until he came to the house of a bandit, another outlaw, an outlaw who had a hatred for the world because his lord had died. And Domna lived there for a while. But there he probably learned the skills of fighting with a sword and with a spear, and of turning the lessons he'd been taught by Leoluchra and Beaumelle from games into a very serious matter. Instead of holding withies of brambles and fighting with them and avoiding being ripped by the claws, he learned to fight with a sword. And instead of sticks, it was steel he was using. And in every game he played, he excelled. Until, once again, his blonde hair and his fame began to outgrow his need for secrecy. And the bandit told him with sadness that he should go, but not before, in the corner of one of the rooms, Domna had seen a spear. A great spearhead. Sheathed in leather, with 30 rivets of Arabian gold, keeping it on its shaft. And not only sheathed in leather, but standing in a pot of oil to keep the blade cool. And that was a memory which stuck with him for a while. And we'll come out to another story. Because the spaces he could go to were getting fewer. So in the forest again, he wandered beside a river until beside the river he saw a man sitting still as a tree, gazing at the water, gazing at the ripples as if they were a mirror of bronze. Waiting, because Domna had grown up polite, he waited until the man raised his eyes, because you can only stare at water for so long. And Domna asked, "What are you doing?" The man introduced himself as Finnegas. And when Domna asked, Finnegas explained that he'd been sitting there for years, what's 1 year, 7 years, watching, waiting for the salmon of knowledge, because he wanted to capture the salmon of knowledge. Domna asked, why do you want to catch a salmon? And Finnegas pointed out all the hazelnut trees that were leaning over the pool, and all the hazelnuts that were dropping into the water. These hazelnuts, he said, were eaten by the salmon. All the magic and the knowledge from the hazelnuts was gathering in the salmon, and whoever caught it and ate it would gain the knowledge. Well, that seemed like a fair enough thing to do, and Domna was needing to lie low a bit, and so he helped Finnegas. And with his help, Finnegas was able to take up more of his time fishing and less of his time mending clothes, hunting in the forest, all those things that you must do in order to live, even if you're as old as Finnegas and have learned to sit very, very still. One day, when Domna was tending the fire, Finnegas came holding a wicker basket with a strange look in his eye. Domna was curious and asked what was in the basket. Finnegas said, "I've caught the fish. I've caught the salmon." And Domna said, "Shouldn't you be happy? You've been waiting for so long for this. Shouldn't you be celebrating?" Finnegas was, "Yeah, I suppose I should be. I really haven't quite come to terms with it yet." And he said, "Tell you what, you can cook the fish for me, hey? You do the cooking. You're good at this. I'm just going into the forest for a wee bit. I'll be back. Don't eat the fish, please." And Finnegas wandered off. And Domna looked and was a bit curious, like, what? Why was the instruction, "Don't eat the fish," necessary? He'd cooked for Finnegas for a long time. He knew how important this fish was. He knew the reward that Finnegas believed would be his for catching the fish. So he put the fish on a skillet or on a spit or on a raft of hazelnuts to swim over the embers of the fire for a while. And he took care of it. He turned it when it needed turned so that it was ready and cooked when Finnegas returned. And Finnegas looked at him and said, yeah, is the fish ready then?" And then he knew very well how good this fish smelled, and who'd been dreaming of what it would be like in his belly the whole time he'd been cooking it, said, yes, there you are. It's ready for you. I've cooked it for you." And Finnegas said, "You haven't tasted it, have you? You haven't had any yet?" And Domna said, No. Oh, I was cooking it for you, and I did keep it all nice and safe. But, well, when it was cooking, one of the bits of its skin started to blister, and the blister didn't look good, so I pushed it with my thumb to stop it. And it burned, so I put my thumb in my mouth, and the flavour of it filled my mouth and my mind, and I could hear the birds singing and the grass growing, and oh. And Finnegas looked relieved. "Aye," said Finnegas, "I had a feeling about this. This wasn't my fish. This wasn't mine to eat. Your name isn't really Domna, is it? Your name is Finn, and you're the son of Cool, aren't you?" And then they had to say, "Well, people have been calling me Finn from my hair, and my father is cool. And Phineas looked at him and said, yeah, there was a prophecy, about the fish. And I always knew that one day you would be the one to fulfill the prophecy. This thing I've been waiting to do, I wasn't able to do until you came. But I think you should eat the whole fish now. It's yours. Eat it. Fill yourself, fill your belly, fill your mind with the magic of all the hazelnuts of years. And then, with that inheritance, go, be a hero. Reclaim what you're taken from your father. Reclaim the glory that came with your mother. Be a great hero. And, well, Demne, who we now know as Finn McCool, looked at Finnegas and saw the sadness and the sadness from all the time waiting, and the joy from finally having given up and embraced the destiny that he knew was going to happen. And Finn knew, because he knew so much now. He walked to the edge of the forest, waving goodbye to Finnegas, who went back to fishing again, and maybe he caught another fish, who knows. Finn walked back to the edge of the forest, and standing there, feeling the trees, he became the light from the sun. He became the spring in the step of a foal in spring. He became the greenness of grass and the swiftness of lightning. And in that moment, he knew the poetry of now and the song of happening. And he walked out into the next story, which I'm not going to tell just now. You'll have to listen or find out or pay attention or look at the hillside, find Ossian's stone, find Fingal's cave, go to Ireland and listen to the mountains. And then you'll be able to tell the stories too. Thank you for listening.